Tessa Jennings had no idea that saying yes to one tutoring job would throw her into the most complicated and heart-stopping situation of her entire life. She pulled her coat tighter around her as she stood in front of the sleek black gate of the massive brick estate in the hills of Westbury. The house behind it looked like something out of a luxury magazine: tall glass windows, manicured hedges, a circular driveway with a fountain in the middle. This was definitely not the kind of place where she usually worked. She double-checked the address on the email she'd printed out. Yep. This was it. Her client, a 10-year-old girl named Kenzie struggling with reading comprehension. The request had come through the tutoring agency she worked for part-time while finishing her graduate degree in education. The pay was 3 times her normal rate, and the schedule was flexible. It had felt too good to be true. Before she could buzz in, the gate opened smoothly like it had been waiting for her. "Miss Jennings," a voice called out. Tessa turned and nearly tripped over her own boots. The man walking toward her wasn't just handsome. He was striking. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark blonde hair swept back and a sharp jawline. He wore a navy wool coat over a charcoal suit, and everything about him radiated power and wealth. The kind of man who probably didn't need to check price tags. Ever. "Yes," she said quickly, adjusting the strap of her bag. "Tessa Jennings, for the tutoring session." "I'm Grayson Zeller," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Kenzie's father, thank you for coming." He didn't smile exactly, but something in the way his eyes softened made her stomach flutter. "Of course," she replied, following him up the stone path to the front door. "I'm really looking forward to working with her." "She's not," he said dryly as he opened the door, "but I'm hoping you can change that." Inside, the house was even more stunning. High ceilings, marble floors, art she didn't recognize but could tell was expensive. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, but it wasn't cold, it felt lived in. A vase of fresh flowers sat on a side table. A pair of girls' sneakers lay kicked off by the stairs. "Kenzie's in the sunroom," Grayson said, leading her through the house. "She's spirited," Tessa smiled. "I like spirited." When they reached the sunroom, Kenzie sat sprawled on a window bench, arms crossed, with a book unopened next to her. Her long brown hair was in a messy ponytail, and she gave Tessa the kind of look that said, "I dare you to try." "Kenzie, this is Miss Jennings," Grayson said. "She's here to help you with reading," Kenzie huffed. "I don't need help." Tessa sat down across from her and pulled out a notebook. "Cool. Then this'll be easy." Kenzie blinked. Grayson watched silently for a moment, then gave Tessa a slight nod and stepped out of the room. Tessa turned back to Kenzie and grinned. "Let's make a deal," she said. "If you read with me for 20 minutes, I'll give you 10 minutes to tell me everything wrong with the story." Kenzie tilted her head. "Everything wrong? Every single thing?" Kenzie cracked a small smile. "Deal." The session flew by. Tessa didn't push too hard, just encouraged and joked and made the book come alive. Kenzie was sharp, just bored. She liked stories, just not ones that felt like homework. By the end, Kenzie was actually laughing. When the session finished, Grayson appeared in the doorway again, arms crossed over his chest. Kenzie ran up to him. "She's not bad," she announced. Tessa laughed. "I'll take that as a win." Grayson smiled, actually smiled this time. "Sounds like a big win." He walked her to the door, and as she stepped out into the driveway, he paused. "I'd like to book you for the rest of the month," he said. 3 sessions a week if you can manage it." Tessa blinked. "That's a lot, but yes, I can." "Good," he said. "Kenzie needs consistency, and apparently she likes you." As she turned to leave, he added, "Do you always make people laugh that easily?" She glanced back, her heart doing something weird. "Only the ones who really need it." He watched her walk to her car, the corner of his mouth tugging up again. Over the next few weeks, the sessions became something Tessa looked forward to. Kenzie opened up more and more, sometimes about the books, sometimes about her day, sometimes about her mom who had passed away 2 years ago. Tessa never pried, just listened. But what she didn't expect was how often Grayson would be around. He worked from home more than she'd assumed. Sometimes he'd walk Kenzie into the room, other times he'd linger nearby, just close enough to overhear their progress. And sometimes, when the session ended, he'd invite Tessa to stay for tea or coffee or dinner. The first time she said no. The second time she stayed. By the third time, she found herself sitting across from him in the formal dining room, eating grilled salmon off plates that probably cost more than her month's rent. She learned that he owned a chain of luxury hotels, that he was originally from Chicago, that he'd taken a step back from the business after his wife died to be more present for Kenzie. "You're doing a great job with her," Tessa said one evening. "She's kind and smart and honest." Grayson looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "You're kind to say that. It's not kindness," she replied. "It's the truth." He was quiet for a moment before asking, "What about you? Family?" She shrugged. "My dad passed when I was little. My mom's in Florida now. It's mostly just me." Grayson leaned forward a little. "That sounds lonely." She gave a soft smile. "Not always." There was a beat of silence, thick with something unspoken. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Do you always pretend you don't know how beautiful you are?" Her heart stuttered. "I what?" He stood, slowly walking around the table until he was beside her chair. "Because I've been trying to find a way to say it for weeks now." She stared up at him, frozen. "Grayson, I know this is unexpected," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I didn't plan for this, I haven't felt something like this in a long time, and the way you are with Kenzie, the way you see her, talk to her, care for her, you've already done more for her than most people in her life." Her throat tightened. "She's easy to care about." "So are you," he said. He didn't kiss her. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, eyes steady, waiting for her to pull away or lean in. Tessa stood slowly, heart pounding. "I think I should go," he nodded, stepping back immediately. "Of course." But as she left that night, the sound of Kenzie's laughter still echoing in her head, all she could think about was the way Grayson had looked at her and how much she didn't hate it. It had been 4 days since Tessa left the Zeller estate with her heart in her throat, and she still hadn't found a way to breathe normally. She hadn't expected him to say it not like that, not with such clarity. And the worst part was, she hadn't been able to stop thinking about him since. She pressed her hand to her chest and forced herself to focus as she rang the bell at the front door. A housekeeper she hadn't met before answered, a petite woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun. "Miss Jennings, come in." "Kenzie's finishing her snack." "Thanks," Tessa said, stepping inside. The sound of footsteps echoed from the second floor, fast and light. Kenzie appeared at the top of the stairs, holding a paper crown on her head and waving a pencil like a scepter. "You're late by 2 minutes." "That's practically detention." "Then I hope you brought extra crayons for my punishment," Tessa replied, grinning. Kenzie bounded down the steps, cape trailing behind her, a blanket fastened with a hair clip. "We're doing story building today." "I made a list of characters." When they entered the study, Tessa noticed the setup had changed. The usual table was now flanked by 2 velvet armchairs, and a tray of lemon water and shortbread cookies sat in the center. It was more comfortable, more intimate. She hesitated. Kenzie dropped into one of the chairs. "Dad said the old setup was boring. He said you deserved better." Tessa sat slowly. "Did he now?" Kenzie shrugged. "He said you're good at bringing things to life. So you should sit somewhere that feels like it." As they started building out a story about a dragon who couldn't breathe fire but could make it rain glitter, Tessa found herself relaxing. Kenzie's imagination was electric, and the girl was finally engaging without resistance. Every question Tessa posed was met with enthusiasm, every prompt answered with wild creativity. Halfway through their session, the door opened quietly and Grayson stepped in. He was dressed in a black wool turtleneck and slacks, phone in hand, voice low. "I'll call you back," he said, disconnecting and tucking the phone into his pocket. "Didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't," Kenzie said without looking up. "You can be the glitter merchant." Grayson raised an eyebrow. "The what?" Tessa bit back a laugh. "He supplies the glitter that powers the dragon's rain clouds." "Of course," he said dryly, pulling a chair closer. Wouldn't want to leave the economy in shambles. The three of them played out the story until Kenzie declared the kingdom saved and dismissed them for the day. Grayson walked Tessa to the door again, but this time when she turned to say goodbye, he didn't step back. "You're incredible with her," he said. "I don't think she's ever been this excited about reading or stories or glitter for that matter." Tessa adjusted the strap of her bag. "She's doing the hard part, I'm just helping her see what's already there." He studied her face for a long moment. "I meant what I said the other night. I know," her voice was quiet, "that's why I left." "You don't want this?" he asked. "I didn't say that." "Then what's stopping you?" Tessa looked down at her shoes for a beat before lifting her gaze again. "Your daughter trusts me, that matters more than anything else right now," Grayson exhaled, not frustrated, just processing. "I respect that, I do. But I want to be honest with you, Tessa. I haven't felt this drawn to someone in years. I don't want to pretend I don't." She opened her mouth to reply, but a voice behind them interrupted. "Dad, can we have grilled cheese for dinner?" Kenzie stood at the top of the stairs, clutching a stuffed giraffe. "Sure, sweetheart, I'll be up in a second." Kenzie nodded and disappeared. Tessa turned to leave, but Grayson caught her wrist gently. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," he said. "But please don't shut the door completely. I think we both know there's something here." Tessa met his eyes, her pulse thudding in her ears. "I'm not shutting it." The next week, their sessions continued. Kenzie's progress became undeniable. Her school had even sent a note home praising the leap in her comprehension and enthusiasm. But something else was shifting too. The air between Tessa and Grayson was charged, undeniable, but they both danced around it, careful not to cross lines. Until Thursday night. She had stayed late. Kenzie insisted on finishing a chapter of the book they were co-writing together. By the time Tessa packed up, the sun had dipped below the hills and the sky had bruised into twilight. Grayson was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, stirring something on the stove. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air. "You're still here," he said as she walked in. Kenzie demanded a dramatic ending to her chapter. "I couldn't say no. She's falling in love with stories," he said, stirring slowly. "Because of you? I think she's just finally realizing she belongs in them." He glanced over. "So do you." Tessa laughed lightly. "I'm not the glitter dragon, no," he said. "You're the one who made her believe the dragon was possible." She stepped closer, drawn in despite herself. "You always talk like that." "Only when I'm terrified," he said with a half grin. "Tessa, I know you're scared of what this could mean. I know you're trying to protect her. But I'm asking just once, what do you want?" She hesitated. For the first time in years, someone was asking her that without expectation, without pressure, just asking. "I want to stop pretending I don't feel something when I see you," she said. "But I don't know how to do that without risking everything." "You already risked something by walking into this house," he said, "and I'm grateful every day that you did." He moved closer slowly, watching her reaction with care. He paused when they were just inches apart. "I won't kiss you until you ask me to," he said. Tessa looked up at him, eyes wide, heart hammering. "Then kiss me," she whispered, and he did. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was deliberate, reverent, like he was making a promise with every movement. One hand cupped her cheek, the other resting gently on her hip. Her fingers found the front of his shirt, gripping it like she'd fall if she let go. When they finally pulled back, breathless, she leaned her forehead against his. "I don't know what happens next," she murmured. "I do," he said. "We figure it out, together." From upstairs, Kenzie's voice rang out. "Dad, you forgot the grilled cheese again," he laughed. "Coming," Tessa shook her head, smiling despite herself. As he turned to go, he looked back. "Stay for dinner," she considered it for half a second. Yes. Tessa hadn't planned to wake up in Grayson's guest room. But after dinner turned into laughter, then into lingering glances and long conversations by the fire, she hadn't wanted to leave. He'd offered the room down the hall from Kenzie's and she'd accepted, heart pounding, nerves twisted in something that wasn't exactly fear. The next morning, she stood barefoot on the balcony outside her room, watching the sun rise over the hills. The estate below was wrapped in a soft gold glow, quiet except for the occasional bird call. A steaming cup of coffee sat on the railing beside her, brought up by a housekeeper who hadn't blinked an eye at her presence. She wasn't sure what surprised her more, how natural it had felt to stay or how little guilt she felt about it. "Tessa," a small voice called behind her. She turned to see Kenzie in her pajamas, her giraffe tucked under one arm and a cautious look in her eyes. "Hey, superstar," Tessa said gently, "you're up early." Kenzie padded over and leaned against the railing. "Did you sleep here?" "I did." "Because of Dad?" Tessa hesitated, then crouched beside her. "Because we were talking late, and he offered me a room." "But only if you're okay with that." Kenzie frowned at the sky. "Most people leave." Tessa rested a hand on her shoulder. "I'm not most people." Kenzie didn't smile, but she didn't pull away either. Later that morning, Grayson found Tessa in the library, flipping through a children's anthology. He leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, one brow raised. "You're still here." She looked up. "Technically, I was never gone." He walked in slowly, stopping just short of her chair. "Kenzie said you two talked." "We did. I didn't want her to be surprised. And she's processing. But she didn't run screaming for the hills, so I'll call that a win." He reached down and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "I meant it when I said I wanted something real with you, but I don't expect you to walk into this life overnight." She closed the book in her lap. "Here's the thing. I've spent years building walls. Teaching, working, staying safe. But you and Kenzie, you're not safe, you're terrifyingly real, and that's what makes it worth trying." He didn't reply. Instead, he kissed her, slow and certain, like the decision had already been made. That afternoon, they took Kenzie to the botanical gardens in the city. Not for a school project or a tutoring assignment, but because Kenzie wanted to see the butterfly dome. Tessa hadn't realized how much she missed doing things just for joy. As they walked through rows of orchids and hanging vines, Tessa noticed Grayson watching her more than the flowers. She nudged him lightly with her elbow. "What?" she asked. "You're good at this," he said, "being with her." "With us? You say that like you expected me not to be." "I didn't expect anything," he said. "I hoped." Kenzie ran ahead to a glass case filled with monarchs and waved them over. They joined her, and Tessa watched as a butterfly landed on the girl's finger. Kenzie's eyes lit up. "Isn't it magic?" she whispered. Grayson looked at Tessa. "Yeah, it is." On the ride home, Kenzie fell asleep in the backseat, giraffe clutched to her chest. The car was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional sound of tires on pavement. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone," Tessa said suddenly. Grayson glanced over, surprised. "That's a pretty heavy request." "You're the one who keeps asking me to take chances. This is me asking back." He considered for a long moment. "All right, here's one. I used to play piano every day. Before the business took over everything." She blinked. "You, the hotel mogul." "I was good too," he said, a small smile playing at his lips. "But it felt selfish, indulgent, so I stopped." "Do you miss it?" "Every day." She reached over and took his hand. "Then maybe it's time you stopped making everyone else the only priority." He didn't answer, but he didn't let go either. Back at the estate, Tessa helped carry a sleeping Kenzie to bed. She laid the girl down gently, pulling the blanket over her and brushing a loose curl from her forehead. Grayson stood in the doorway, watching quietly. When they stepped out into the hallway, he said, "She trusts you. She's a lot braver than she thinks. So are you." The next evening, Grayson invited Tessa to a charity gala benefiting literacy programs, an annual event he usually attended alone. She hesitated at first, but he convinced her with a single sentence. "You've given my daughter her voice back. Let me celebrate you for once." He didn't warn her what kind of event it would be. When the driver opened the door at the entrance of the crystal-domed ballroom, Tessa's breath caught. Dozens of photographers flanked the velvet ropes, and the marble stairs leading to the entrance were lined with lights and banners. She stepped out in a navy gown Grayson had sent earlier that day, unsure how he'd known her size, but it fit like it was made for her. As soon as they stepped onto the carpet, the cameras exploded with flashes. Grayson leaned down and whispered, "You look like the reason stars exist." Inside, the gala was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestra, champagne flutes balanced on silver trays. And yet, the only thing Tessa could focus on was the way Grayson's hand rested at the small of her back, steady, present, proud. After a brief speech from the foundation director, Grayson was called to the stage. He stepped up to the podium, clearing his throat. Tonight, we're here to support literacy, to give children a chance to discover their own stories. I've recently been reminded what a gift that is, thanks to someone sitting in this room. Tessa froze. She walked into my home to help my daughter. And instead, she changed both of our lives. People turned toward her, heads tilting, eyes curious. I won't embarrass her by saying her name, he continued, but I will say this. The best stories don't happen on the page, they happen when you least expect them. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they rewrite everything you thought you knew about love. The applause was thunderous. Tessa's face burned, but she couldn't stop smiling. When he returned to their table, he didn't say anything. He just kissed her hand softly and held it there for a long time. Later that night, after the gala ended and the guests had gone, Grayson walked her to the car. "You didn't have to say those things," she murmured. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." She reached up, fingers brushing his lapel. "You're not who I thought you were." "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Then tell me what you're thinking right now." "I'm thinking," she said, "that I might be falling in love with you." He didn't hesitate. "Good. Because I'm already there." Grayson stood in the courtyard outside the gallery, his fingers laced with Tessa's as a breeze carried the scent of jasmine across the stones. The gala had ended hours ago, but neither of them had been ready to say goodbye. Now the world had quieted, and the only sound was the low hum of distant traffic and the soft rustle of leaves overhead. "I didn't plan any of this," Tessa said, not looking at him. "I didn't come into your life expecting anything but a paycheck and a few reading sessions." Grayson turned to her, his hand still holding hers. "I didn't plan it either, but you walked through my door and everything started shifting." She looked up at him, something vulnerable in her expression. "I'm not polished. My life isn't surrounded by marble floors and private galas. I don't know how to fit into your world." "You don't have to fit into it," he said. "You belong in it just by being in mine." "I don't want to be someone you admire from a distance," she said. "I want to be part of the messy parts, the hard mornings, the bad days, the moments when everything feels impossible." He stepped closer, close enough that her breath caught again. "Then take all of it. I'm not offering you a fantasy, Tessa. I'm offering you a life, a real one, with me." And with her? She touched the lapel of his coat, her fingers barely brushing the fabric. "What if I'm scared I'll mess it up?" "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "But I'd rather fall with you than keep standing alone." She didn't reply. Instead, she leaned in first this time, pressing her lips to his with a certainty that hadn't been there before. The next morning, Tessa found herself seated in the kitchen with Kenzie, who was hunched over a sketch pad and humming softly to herself. Grayson was upstairs on a call, and the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting soft patches of light across the floor. "What are you drawing?" Tessa asked. Kenzie held up the page. It was a castle with 3 towers. In one window was a girl with glasses and a book. In another, a man with a crown and a tie. In the third, a small girl holding a dragon. "That's us," Kenzie said simply. Tessa blinked. "You drew me in your castle, you live there now," Kenzie said like it was obvious. "You don't have to leave." Tessa glanced toward the stairs. "That's not really up to me, though." "It is," Kenzie said, setting her pencil down. "Dad says people who make us better get to stay, and you make us better." Tessa didn't know what to say to that, so she just reached over and squeezed the girl's hand. That afternoon, Grayson suggested they go out for the day. Not to a gala, not to a business event, just the 3 of them. He didn't say where. They ended up in a small town an hour outside the city where cobblestone streets wound through antique shops and old bookstores. Kenzie darted ahead toward a wooden sign shaped like a cat holding a book. Inside, the shop smelled like dust and cinnamon. Tessa wandered through the aisles while Grayson and Kenzie searched for a story about a pirate queen. She ran her fingers across the spines of weathered novels, stopping when one caught her eye, a collection of poems about second chances. Grayson appeared beside her a moment later. "Find something?" She held up the book. "Maybe." He was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "I've been thinking about something." She looked over, curious. "I want to build something permanent," he said, "not just memories, a future." She waited. "I've been looking at a school," he continued. "A community one in the city for kids who are falling through the gaps. I want you to help me create it." She blinked. "You're serious?" "I've already bought the building," he said. "But I need someone who sees kids the way you do, someone who doesn't quit on them. Someone who understands what it means to be the one they count on." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You want me to run it?" "Not just run it," he said. "Shape it." She stared at the book in her hands. "That's not just a job." "No," he said. "It's a beginning." That night back at the estate, Tessa sat in the backyard with Kenzie, watching the stars blink into view. Fireflies danced above the grass, and the soft hum of the pool lights filled the silence. "I never knew there were this many stars," Kenzie said. "You just have to get far enough from the city to see them clearly," Tessa replied. Kenzie was quiet, then asked, "What will happen to us now?" Tessa didn't answer right away. "You want me to stay?" she asked instead. Kenzie nodded slowly. "You make Dad happy. And when Dad's happy, I feel safe." Tessa wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Then I'll stay." Later that night, Grayson found her in the study, curled up in the window seat with the poetry book still in her lap. He crossed the room silently, reaching into his pocket. "I wasn't going to do this yet. I was going to wait until the school opened, or maybe Christmas, but I don't want to wait anymore." She sat up slowly, heart thudding. "I'm not asking this because it's convenient, or because Kenzie needs you. I'm asking because I do. Because you've become the part of my life I never saw coming, and now I can't imagine it without you." He opened the velvet box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant and understated, a single diamond set in a slim gold band. "Marry me, Tessa." She stared at it, then up at him, her eyes wide. "I don't need a perfect plan," she said, "but I need to know this is real, that it's not just a beautiful moment." "It's not," he said. "It's the rest of my life." She stood slowly, emotion tightening her throat. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like laughter and tears and something that finally felt like home. The next morning, they told Kenzie together. She stared at them for a long moment, then launched herself into their arms. "I already drew the castle," she said. "Now we just have to move in." 3 months later, the school opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony on a crisp fall morning. Grayson gave the speech, but it was Tessa who stood at the front doors afterward, ushering in the first group of nervous, wide-eyed students. Kenzie helped 2 passing out folders and coloring books, and telling every kid who walked in that they were going to love it here. That night, the 3 of them sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, eating pizza from the box and watching the stars again. Tessa leaned her head on Grayson's shoulder. "We built something," he kissed her temple, "and we're just getting started." Kenzie yawned and curled into Tessa's side. "Can we stay like this forever?" Tessa looked at Grayson, and he nodded. "Forever sounds perfect." The first snow came early that winter, blanketing the hills around the Zeller estate in a soft, glistening white. Tessa stood at the window of the new upstairs study, watching as Kenzie ran through the backyard with a red scarf trailing behind her, her mittened hands tossing snow into the air like confetti. Grayson stepped in behind her, adjusting the cuff of his charcoal sweater. "She said she's building a snow throne. Apparently, she's been promoted from glitter dragon to snow queen." Tessa turned, eyes dancing. "She's earned it. She even created royal decrees this morning. I'm not allowed to start the day without Coco. She's wise beyond her years," he said, stepping beside her, "and she's never been happier." Tessa leaned into him, her voice quiet. "Neither have I." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his jeans and pulled out a folded envelope. "This came this morning, from the city board." She took it, unfolding the letter slowly. Her eyes scanned the page, widening as she reached the middle. "They approved it," she breathed. "The grant came through. And the curriculum proposal was accepted in full," he said. "You're officially running the school, Tessa, on your terms." She lowered the letter, her hand trembling slightly. "I never thought something like this would be mine." "It's not just yours," he said. "It's something you created, from the ground up. You didn't just step into our lives, you built something inside them." She looked up at him, her expression full of something deeper than gratitude. "I want to put down roots here, not just in the school or in this house. I want to be part of every day, the boring ones, the loud ones, the messy ones." He kissed her forehead. "Then stay forever." She nodded, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I already have." Later that week, they traveled to the coast for a quiet ceremony by the cliffs. The air was brisk but clear, and the ocean stretched endlessly behind them as they stood beneath a simple floral arch framed in white pine branches. Kenzie wore a silver dress and carried a bouquet of tiny white roses. She stood between them, beaming like she had orchestrated the entire event herself. Grayson wore a navy suit with no tie, his hair tousled just enough to make Tessa smile as he took her hands. "I didn't think second chances existed," he said, his voice steady. "But then you walked into my life not asking for anything and giving everything. You gave my daughter a voice, you gave me peace. But more than that, you gave me you, and I am never letting that go." Tessa blinked back tears, her voice trembling. "I never believed I belonged in someone's forever. I was always the helper, the one who fixed things and then slipped out before anyone noticed. But you saw me, and you never tried to change me, you just made space for me to stay. I love you, Grayson. And I love the life we've built." Kenzie handed them the rings, her gloved hands shaking slightly with excitement. As they slid the bands onto each other's fingers, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the cliffside. They kissed as the waves crashed below, snowflakes drifting down like confetti from the sky. Afterward, the three of them returned to the estate, where a warm fire crackled in the great room, and a small group of close friends and staff quietly celebrated around a long oak table adorned with candles and evergreen garlands. Tessa changed into a soft cream sweater and slippers, her hair still curled from the ceremony. She stood beside the fireplace, watching Grayson pour champagne into 3 glasses, one filled with sparkling cider for Kenzie. "I think this makes us official," he said, handing her a glass. "You mean outside of the vows, the rings, and the snowstorm kiss?" she teased, clinking her glass against his. Kenzie sat cross-legged on the rug, carefully cutting out hearts from red paper. When she looked up, she asked, "Now that we're a family, do we get a holiday name?" Grayson knelt beside her. "What kind of name?" "Like Team Zeller," she said. "Or the Glitter Patrol," Tessa laughed. "I vote for the Zeller Chronicles," Kenzie grinned. "That sounds like a book." "Can I write it?" Grayson raised a brow. "Only if you give me a cool chapter. You can be the one where everything goes wrong and then gets fixed with a surprise puppy," she said. He looked at Tessa. "She's going to be the president one day, isn't she?" "Probably." That night, with Kenzie tucked into bed after insisting on reading 3 chapters of a fantasy novel, aloud complete with different voices for each character, Tessa and Grayson retired to the master suite, where the windows overlooked the snow-covered hills. She curled into him beneath the thick quilt, her head resting on his chest. "You know," she murmured, "I used to think love was something you stumbled into, something accidental. And now I know it's something you build, moment by moment. Choice by choice." He brushed his fingers through her hair. "Then I'll keep choosing you every day." She kissed his shoulder, eyes drifting shut. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The house settled around them, full of warmth and flickering firelight. Outside, the wind whispered secrets across the hills. But inside, where laughter had replaced silence, and love had replaced loneliness, everything was exactly as it should be. Spring arrived the following year in a riot of color. The fields beyond the school bloomed with wildflowers, and students ran across the grass barefoot, shouting lines from their favorite stories. Inside, Tessa stood at the front of the library, reading aloud to a group of third graders who hung on every word. Grayson walked in quietly, watching from the back. When she finished the last page, the children clapped wildly, and one girl whispered, "That was the best ending ever." Later, as they walked hand in hand through the school garden, Grayson glanced down at her with a smile that didn't need words. She squeezed his hand. "We made it," he nodded, "and we're just getting started." They walked on, sunlight warming their faces, their daughter's laughter echoing in the distance, and the rest of their forever stretched out before them bright, unshakable, and entirely their own.